Well, look, we've got plenty of time for questions. Yes. Do we have a microphone, or we just people? Yep, there we are. Shannon, the gentleman here, and the. Perhaps you could just say who you are as well.
I'm Edgar Miller. Could we just follow up the discussion you were just having? Do I take it that the two of you agree the trusted trader scheme, I may be too pejorative, but is a disaster for companies in its current form, and you are suggesting that in the future you can change that? And if you do agree that, why is it that it is so widely used within the EU as compared to here?
Thank you very much.
No, I can start. No, it's not a disaster because there are 50,000 companies worldwide that are AAO status today. There are differences between the different countries how you apply it. And what I was saying is that the early adopters that already had given a lot of benefits to companies without being in AAO, of course, have less benefits to give at that time. So when European Union, for instance, put the AAO program in place, 2008, they were already given a lot of trade facilitation to many companies. So there was not much to give in the next instance of actually getting this status. Secondly, it was also a compromise between 28. So, of course, there are countries who moved faster and used the international standard in a better way with more benefits. And those benefits are also within the framework of the UCC today and would be hopefully in a framework of a customs legislation in the United Kingdom as well. So there are opportunities of doing it better than we did in 2008, like in any other systems or models. However, having said that, there is still a merit to being in AAO today, because that's why there are 50,000, there are 7,000 in Germany, for instance. And mutual recognition is still there and are booming for the moment. There are more and more technical agreements, and that is when an AO status in one country is acknowledged in the other country as well, and you sign a bilateral agreement between the two countries. And these technical agreements take 6 to 9 months, not 5 to 7 years like free trade agreements normally take. So of course there are benefits of being an AEO. However, the AEO application today that we use, and still very few companies leave from the program, so something beneficiary are already there. It could be done much better. An AEO in the European Union is about to be upgraded, just like it is in US, just like it is in Japan, Korea, these countries who were early adopters, but it takes some time. So of course, those who did it the last 3 or 4, 5 years, knowing everything we knew from 10 to 15 years ago, have done it better. And now it's time to actually update it quicker in the United Kingdom and connect it with the European Union system, which means again that we can make a lot of benefits of the system itself. So it could be a platform for what we are talking about.
To have a supplementary, so you agree it is still worthwhile UK companies who heretofore have not had to worry about these sort of things doing it?
Absolutely, but I think a new Trusted Trader program updated would, of course, could give much more benefits than it does today. Yeah, absolutely.
Siobhan.
Yeah, from a business perspective, I'd say that whether saying it's good or bad, I would weigh it up. So the truth of the matter is, in some member states, you pretty much are going to be doing an AEO application in order to get certain facilitations like IPR, inward processing relief, and things like that. They're using the questionnaire of the AEO application as their starting point. So you're kind of more on that path. The other truth is that in certain member states, being seen as certified as a trusted trader is something that actually matters and has a kudos in and of itself. And then, of course, it's used in particular by freight and logistics service providers in order to be able to offer facilitations to their customers. So from a pure UK perspective right here and now, as a business, I would turn around and say, okay, what is it that you actually need? Is it that you need processing relief, or is it that you want to reduce your guarantees and things like that to determine whether or not it's worthwhile? But for you, the individual company, but that's not the same as saying that the package isn't. But going forward, I think it's really crucial, which is what comes out in the report, is that it looks at being a multi-agency trusted trader program, because there's no point having a simplification for customs if you're still being stuck because of some agri-type certification, or if it doesn't facilitate you because as a logistics provider, you may have to prove something about your driver, for example. I'm kind of making it up, but you know what I mean in terms of having
work across.
Yeah. And that's then really where, as the standard to be set with the tiers underneath, it actually becomes a a very useful tool for both business and for the administrations in order for how they will then be able to focus their risk assessments and then what they actually physically do on the ground on a day-to-day basis.
I love the way you're catching yourself when you're doing acronyms. I can see you just start on it and then you explain it for us. So thank you very much. There was a hand, yes, gentleman here, and then we'll come to over there.
Thanks. Peter McSweeney from the Joint Customs Consultative Committee. I was curious about the Internet of Things. You were talking about you can track the vehicle, track the pallet, and so on. Well, that's pretty easy, and it happens now. If you get a UK delivery, the parcel company can tell from the driver's phone, really, where he's delivered it, when he's delivered it, and so on. The problem with customs is that everything is done at item level, not box level. And it also, that's the case when it comes to the ICS declaration, the security declaration, which in some ways is a bigger challenge than the fiscal declaration from customs. And I was just curious, and Siobhan, you'll know this, if you're moving, say, 100 widgets to be incorporated into an engine somewhere, if you have to declare those, before they, at the time they arrive, and then you find out, oh, I haven't got 100, I've only got 60, and you'll probably know that before your internal system has caught up with that. Then you've got the process of having to, claim back the duty or the VAT or whatever. So I'm curious as to how you take the sort of consignment level down to the item level that you're going to need.
Yeah. So, I mean, in an electronic format, that could be that item level is traceable itself. It depends what the item is, of course. But if you're down to just a pure process point of view of literally counting, then it may not be that, you can put an IoT device in with, a piece of food or something like that. It depends what you're talking about, really. But if there's areas where IoT can make an improvement to the efficiency of that, maybe it's by weight, a sensor that's measuring the weight, then you will know how many of those packets are going to be on that pallet by the weight and the weight of the individual items. So sensors like that could support the measuring of individual items.
So it would depend on the object and what exactly you're measuring, basically.
Yeah, the thing with the Internet of Things is that everything is often quite bespoke. Everyone's got their own way of own thing that they want to monitor, and this is quite a specific example, and that's not unusual in this industry. But that may be one way of looking at it. There's ways in which you could monitor individual items that we've just mentioned, which may not have been thought about previously. That could relate back to a sensor that collected that data. It didn't have to be continuously connected to the network. It could then relay that information at a point later down the road, or instantly at that time, depending on the criticality of the application that you're talking about. So it's not going to maybe solve every single use case, but I think there's many use cases which it can really help.
Lars, do you want to come in?
No, just another perspective on your question is, of course, that you're absolutely right. There's been a lot of focus on transaction controls and transaction movements and management over time, but modern control strategies for customs today around the world, to take examples again, move to system-based controls. That's where, again, AO and trusted trader programs can come into play. So if customs would actually know that you had a system in place to detect that error you were saying, then you should also be able to self-correct it automatically through your books and entry into records instead. So again, of course, if it works well, you actually are moving away from transactions. That's one of the problems we have with the borders today. So of course, if you look at systems instead, and there are examples in Australia and New Zealand we have in the report as well, where they have some not only simplified reporting, but streamlined reporting, are basically using the already existing flows of information between a buyer and a seller. All of them are trusted. Then you can actually exit at any time and do that type of correction yourself by being trusted. But of course, we need to move to that level to make it work. Yeah, that's for sure. There is some distance to go. Take a couple of months. Take a couple of months to do it.
Now, I know there's a hand over there, and Shamil, you'll tell me if there's anybody on that side of the room who put. Oh, I can see one gentleman over there. So let's take the lady first in the pink jacket. I think the lights aren't deceiving me. There we are. Microphone's way. There we are.
That's Anna.
Yeah.
Hi, Anna Ijewska, Customs Specialist. I've only glanced at this report throughout the day, so I haven't, and I fully appreciate it's not a customs report, you haven't gone into that level of detail.
Sure.
But it does mention certain solutions and proposes certain things. It has the special economic zones, it has the temporary inward processing, I think I've seen, and there was something around inward warehousing, which I understand is a combination of customs warehousing and inward processing. So all these new procedures, my question is, have you are you planning and could you map out different scenarios and how this would work in practice from a kind of what documents will be needed, who will need to submit them and so on, because it's very difficult to understand what's being proposed and assess how feasible it is without seeing, you know, how it will look A to Z. And I completely understand this was not part of this exercise, but maybe this could be a request going forward. If you could do that, then it would be much easier for everyone to understand how it's going to look like.
I think that's a really, I will ask Lars, I think it's a really good challenge. It reflects some of the conversations we had earlier on in the year when we were discussing with government officials. A number of MPs were involved. I think you're absolutely right. Part of this is about see how it works literally on the ground for those involved in the schemes. But Lars, do you want to?
No, I fully agree. I think I'm the only on the technical panel on the panel here beside yourself. No, to answer your question, absolutely right. There are some examples in the report actually when you get time to read it more in detail. But of course we have to take those examples. But the examples that are there as examples for different types of procedures we can use, already existing procedures, are actually procedures already existing or combination of them that could be used within the framework of the UCC, because we think again it's important that the other side would be able to connect, so we would be able to get something out of it, because UK can basically post Brexit decide on anything, at least within the framework of wanting to sign free trade agreements with others or technical agreements with others. But we need to get something that is connected. So again, taking the example of having a trusted trade on one side which is authorized for transit, for instance, that transit movement could, as Hans explained before, go to an authorized trader on the other side, regardless if that is an AAO or not. And those type of combinations of procedures already existing, including inward processing, including different types of simplification around warehousing, that has been or already is in place somewhere in the European Union with support from international standards and international law and UCC, are things we are proposing to have a look at technically, and in the next steps of discussions also with European Union and on the roadshow that this Commission will do,
Right.
We'll have a discussion not only with the European Commission but also with the member states to saying, look, are these opportunities we can actually use to again mitigate the problems we're trying to solve. But not only that, but some of these things should have been done in the UK 10 years ago or other member states of the European Union. It has not been done for different reasons. But they will have an impact also of exports and imports from the rest of the world. So again, we are concentrating on SMEs, for instance, saying a problem there's 150,000 in the UK or something only trading with the EU. And that's specifically interesting from Northern Ireland to Ireland, as we heard today. But in reality, some of them are not exporting to China or US or Brazil because of the procedure that is there is too costly today. So of course, if we simplify that, modernize it, makes it the best in the world, then of course it will mitigate some of the issues with the European Union and find solutions there. But at the same time, it creates possibilities for actually doing export to other countries and signing mutual recognition agreements with countries like Brazil, US, and China and others as well. So of course, you're right, we need to describe it more in detail. That's the next steps of this work that needs to be done. But I think we have, and I can speak for the panel itself, we have gone through these examples. We have looked at these different types of traders within the technical panel and put a lot of work in talking to people around that in Ireland and all over the UK as well, to be able to see that this is actually a palette of solutions put together. You can't pick and choose some of them. You need to put them together, get a framework for it, and move it to the next level. And then it's actually possible to use them and utilize them this way. But we'll have the discussion later on, I'm sure.
Thank you very much indeed. There was a gentleman. Yes, perhaps you can just say who you are as well. Yeah.
Yep, David Hennig. Almost to bring public a discussion I've had on social media with Lars, among others, about the timescales for deployment. So
A lot of Twitters.
Shankar said earlier that the UK's not managed to implement a single window in something like 25 years since we actually were supposed to be doing this. Given this programme, and you keep saying, there's lots of technology available and processes, yes, clearly, but is it really realistic to do all of this in a short space of time and do all the other things that are in the report about SPS zones and various other things? Is such a programme really realistic given the politics, the other challenges that are around? Or are we in danger of just having an optimism bias? Say, yes, of course we can do it in 2 years, when actually, 5 to 10. Why? Do we need to be in such a hurry?
I think you are in a hurry, yeah. But
We need to be in a hurry.
we need to be in a hurry. No, but it's a valid question, David. I think one of the things is taking the single window as an example. Well, it's taken a long time. It took 20 years in the US, and some countries are still looking at it. But it took 2 years in Sweden when we managed it there. So it's possible to do. Singapore did it in 2.5 years. So there are also examples of these type of solutions that is valid to do in a framework like this. So what I'm saying is that, and that's some of the discussion we had in the past, is that there are examples that this can be done if the political will is there. Political will is not there, it's going to take more than 25 years. So obviously, you're right in the sense, what I've been trying to say and what we've been trying to say in the report, this is not about the technology itself. Technology needs to be there to support some of the solutions. It's not a big IT system we are building here. We're saying there are room within international legislation, within best practices around the world, with international standards that can be utilized and used if there's a political will on both sides to agree or negotiate on that. Where you have a point, and I think this is something we need to look into very fairly, is of course that means change management, not necessarily a big IT project, which is sometimes the thing we have discussed. But it means that there needs to be business process re-engineering, coordination of agencies, and of course that has its mechanisms itself. It's difficult. My experience from other countries is that if the political will is strong enough, it actually is possible to do in that period of time we talk about. But it is a lot of undertakings to do in that short period of time. There's no doubt about that. It's not simple, but it's doable. I'm absolutely convinced it's doable in that time, as long as we stay away from these very huge technology projects, which in my opinion and the opinion of the Commission and the technical panel is not needed at this stage to actually do the things we want to do.
I don't know if our other panelists have got views on timing at all. Richard, any sort of commercial experiences from working with clients in this area?
Yeah, I mean, from an IoT perspective, there's obviously a number of customers out there now using our platform. So timelines is, I mean, the 2-year timeline that you mentioned is certainly possible for an IoT project. It depends what you're going to focus on. In fact, the main issue with IoT is actually which bit are you going to focus on? You could focus on so many areas that could support this problem. It's about narrowing them down, making the priority right, and focusing on that to give you the biggest return on investment. So that is certainly doable within the first couple of years because the technology is there and has been there for a long time now. But if you wanted to look at big, wacky, and exciting smart borders, which I think we will come to eventually, then that relies on technology that's being rolled out at the moment, and that's in the sort of 3 to 5 year, a little bit longer, yes. But there's definitely quick wins there that should be looked at. Yeah.
Siobhan, any view on timing from a?
Yeah, sorry, I'm going to put a spanner in the works because I don't know IT, I don't do IT, that's what amazing people like that do. I just look at what I see in front of me. The Safety and Security Amendment of the European Customs Law was what, 2005? Was it something like that? In that, they talked about these projects, these IT projects, including the single window. Didn't quite happen. Then there was the modernised Union Customs Code discussions. In that, there's all of these IT solutions to facilitate trade. And that took a few years, and then it took a few more years for the legislation, and we had a cut-off date, which I think was last year. This has been extended and extended and extended again. That now it's looking that single window is going to come out in 2025, maybe. So that instantly makes me question it. I don't know if that's because you've got too many different players around that table in terms of the way in which customs is done in the European Union, which we will hopefully be able to overcome. But I think these are the things that from a business perspective, if you're looking at us to support these ideas, we're going to be like, well, okay, based on what I can see in front of us already, this is a bit of a pipe dream. So part of the next stage of the report and looking at it is what exactly is it that's required, whether it's in terms of policy or it's in terms of a bit of legislation or it's in terms of kicks up the backside. These are also parts of it in order to get our buy-in into these projects. And then the other side of it, the reality is that business, just like customs and like other government agencies, we have our own legacy systems. We have our own monoliths of IT or Excel spreadsheets or a bit of something in between. So we also need to be able to look at these things, these solutions, and say, yes, we can actually participate in doing entry into the debt clearance records, or things like that too. And so it is a partnership all the way through, just the same way as UK agencies need to collaborate with the European Union and with their agencies in the Republic of Ireland, so does government officials need to collaborate with business to see how it is within the timeframes we can all move forward together and facilitate trade.
But do you accept I think the premise in the report that actually there are, I think Richard used the phrase quick wins, there are things that can be changed, some things might take longer, but there are things and existing processes that can be adapted, can be used, that actually could come into being or come into use much more quickly?
I think that there always are, but the question is who's paying for it? Right.
So it does come down to...
Yeah, because I mean, at the end
money.
of the day, it's a great solution that maybe, there's a little bit of kit that can go on there, which goes onto a pallet, which then goes onto, a lorry and da-da-da-da. All of those costs are going to be pushed up. We then get it, and then obviously we'll push it along too. So it's,
financial support is important.
Financial support is very important across the whole supply chain.
Yeah.
In order to be able to move forward together.
And David, I think just before we've got time for one more question. Before I see if there's another hand got a hand there, I was just going to, I wanted to include in the foreword to the executive summary that Greg and I have written, you will see a reference to the March 2019 Strasbourg instrument that the EU have agreed with the UK, talking about establishing by the 31st December 2020 alternative arrangements. So I think it's important just to be aware of that commitment and agreement already given in terms of timing. Of course, establishing and bringing them all into operation, can take time. Exactly as we said, different timescales. But I think that is an important commitment that we should be cognizant of. So I've got one more. Any further arms I'm missing?
There's one down there.
Right. Okay. Let's take. I think we've definitely got time for two more. So let's take the gentleman at the back, and then we'll come to the gentleman by the aisle.
Thank you, Alex Stanovich from the Institute for Government. Not to, I think, stretch out this conversation on this timing point too much, but I think we should distinguish between how long it would take for government to put in place what it needs to and how long it would take for business to adapt.
Absolutely.
I think the timeline that would be most difficult and would take the most amount of time is business adapting to the new process. And obviously on the island, there are sensitivities about how you would allow that to happen.
Absolutely.
But the example you'd give is probably, the UK government's put out easements, the simplified, what's it called, the TSP. There's been very low take-up of that procedure, even though it would be quite existential for small businesses and they really need to, but yet there's been such a small take-up, and you could partly say that's the UK government hasn't promoted it enough, but it is hard to reach small businesses, I think, so that is the component I think it's going to take the most amount of time. Thank you.
I mean, Lars, thank you very much. Lars, perhaps if your, obviously, experience, in your experience, in terms of getting business to adopt things, what's worked, where have there been hiccups, what would you be saying to the UK government now in terms of exactly as just suggested, reaching out to small businesses?
It is a great point. I think it makes a lot of sense to say that we need to take that into account, the time it takes, and there needs to be capacity building, there needs to be education, digital education, information, and these type of things to make this work. There's no doubt. And it will take time for businesses to adopt as well. But the most important thing there is certainty. What is it we are going to adapt to? Where are we going? What is the plan to where to go? And we all know when it comes to modernization projects, at least in this specific area as well, there's three things. One is legislation. That's what normally takes a long time. Could go quicker if there's political will for it. IT, technology, we talked about that. That takes time. There's no doubt about it. And then, of course, it's the change management itself in both sides. So government working differently and changing. Again, political will I've seen work wonders with that, because if you have to, you have to. And of course, even if it takes time, it's possible to do. In private sectors, it is a bigger challenge in the sense that, again, specifically small and medium-sized companies are very difficult to reach. They are doing business. They don't have time to go to educations or meetings or anything like that. And even the trade organizations themselves have difficulty representing them to reach them. But again, I think Hans talked before about there is a service provider side as well that needs to take a responsibility here, that can be an intermediary for helping out. There is, of course, government needs to do capacity building, as I said before, of actually trying to reach out and also finance some of this, as Schenker said before as well, to be the ability. And of course, the solutions themselves needs to be, again, user-friendly. It needs to be simple ways of doing things instead of more difficult and complicated ways of doing it. And I think there's no quick fix for that. It needs to start as soon as possible, hopefully tomorrow, and then do it as quick as we can. But it's doable to do within the time frames we have been talking about. I'm absolutely convinced. Everything will not be ready at that at a specific time, but enough to actually make it work. And then some of the things what we are planning for now would never be in use and needed anyway, because there will be other things happening in the meantime by doing it. But I think the suggestions in the report, also looking into how do you actually get take-up from private sector is something we really need to concentrate on in the next level. But then we need to know what that alternative arrangements are.
So they need to know where they're headed in order
Exactly.
to start the transition
Yes,
plan.
and then private sector, in my experience, starts working very quickly of actually getting there. The problem is the uncertainty.
Yeah. And the final question, gentleman on the aisle, this is a microphone just to here. Yeah, lovely.
John Lucy, Freight Transport Association. Just going back to AEO, I mean, the UK has got extremely low take-up. I think 660 companies, which is extremely low. The message we're getting from industry is there's conflicting advice, really. When Brexit became a thing, AEO was cited as being the solution to everything. This is going to be the silver bullet for Brexit. And now we're being told, well, we're not sure it's going to be recognised by the EU after Brexit, or is mutual recognition has not been 100% confirmed from the EU. I know that's the right price or not. And potentially there may be another trusted trader scheme. So this whole sort of scenario, again, uncertainty, hence no one's going to put their hands in their pockets if they can avoid it and go for AEO right now.
I think we're kind of come back to where we started, which is not a bad place to be always. Lars, do you have any final thoughts?
No, we see take-up of mutual recognition agreements between these soon 100 countries that have program is enormous for the moment. There's a lot of mutual recognition agreements in place. The old, again, just like the old programs that our legacy programs, of course, didn't have benefits enough. So if you do a mutual recognition between the two of them, there will not be much added value. But if we look at programs again, like I mentioned, Australia or Brazil or Middle East, the programs that we see right now coming up, Turkey and others, there's a totally different picture there. And independent studies who measure these things, the Federation of Industry in Brazil, for instance, have calculated fantastic results. Private sector themselves saying this is actually working. So what I'm saying is that yes, in the sense that the AEO program that is there, those who already are AEO should be transformed into a new program. It doesn't have to take very long, but we have to define, of course, what are the criteria on different tiers and so forth, what are the benefits you can get out of it. And it was said before, as Open said as well, that you know, there's a lot of benefits and a lot of simplification already, but all of them have an application process that is difficult, that does cost, that does take time to go through. If you have a warehouse, you want a new warehouse, that's a process. If you need to guarantee for transit, that's a process. And going on like that, that is also a lot of cost that is already there for the moment. Moving it into one single status instead could actually be one of the ways of actually getting it more beneficiary for companies. So what I'm saying is that this is the international standard that is growing all around the world. The added value of using that as a platform is that you can use it not only with the European Union. I can guarantee you they will sign a technical agreement on mutual recognition with the UK if you had an AO program, already the one you have today, but of course a bigger one that embraces more companies. The countries that are aggressive in this, they talk about 70 to 90% of the trade within their trusted trader programs. So it is a different animal in that sense. It takes some time to get it there, obviously, but there are also quick fixes within that specific, say, instrument that can be done. But it needs to be done. It's not what we have today that will do this trick. That I agree on. But if there are developments similar to other countries, then this could be a platform to actually use. And I think the interesting thing with that, finally, is again that you can also use it with all the other countries around the world. It actually has an added benefit, not only mitigating some of the issues with European Union, together with things like transit, together with things like inward processing, temporary importation, a lot of other things that are there already to mitigate some of these issues. And the palette of these solutions together can actually get us way far than looking at other types of solutions that is not in the international standards. So that's definitely the recommendation we have from the group, that use what is already there, utilize it better, put it in place, do a modernization that UK should have done 10 years ago, just like all others, so you're in good company. But doing it firstly actually can help mitigating this problem and taking you further down the line as well.
Yeah. Siobhan.
Yeah, I mean, on the existing AEO and what to do in a no-deal scenario, you're right, the information was very conflicting. And I think what's come out in the wash is actually, I'm going to say it doesn't really provide you with the benefit. And that's purely for the UK company as the importer or the exporter in the UK. But if we're talking about, you know, what benefit does it give you as a trading partner with another country? First of all, under the current AEO, it's only AEO safety and security that is actually the bit with mutual recognition. So most of the time when we're talking about AEO, we're talking about the custom simplification piece, which if you don't apply for all of it, is a standalone in terms of you as a trader and what simplifications and authorizations you're going for, not the mutual recognition piece. That you need the safety and security certification.
In the European Union today.
Yes, that's what I'm saying, in the European Union today. So when you look at it in terms of just where we're at now and what we've got, the benefits and putting the efforts into that program and taking it forward as an alternative arrangement is very, 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 very small. But that's why Lars and others are looking at, you know, a much broader type of trusted trader program with the tiers underneath, of course, because that is what potentially will provide the trade, you know, importing, exporting benefits. And from what you're saying, the fact that there are others across the globe, and hopefully also with the European Union as well going forward, it's something that needs to be invested in now in order to, even if it's not that quick fix, in medium term, it does provide a platform in which to have, you know, a more seamless border interaction.
Well, that is a very nice segue. You've just used the right phrase, because that heralds our next session. So thank you very much. Well, we didn't practice that. But can I thank you all for your questions. And I hope you will join me in thanking Lars and Richard and Siobhan for their expertise and for the discussion. Thank you very much.